guys up for another Dates with Kate storytime video. In this series, I update you on a date that I went on. I'm now obviously happily in a relationship, but I do still have quite a lot of stories left over from my single days. I was single for 2 years and I went on around 40 first dates and a bunch of second dates as well in that period of time, most of which I met on apps, because I found it really difficult to naturally meet people in London. I think I've left it enough time now to update you on a date that I went on last August. I've been hesitant to film this date because I think he comes across in not the best light, and I don't want anyone to think that I am taking the piss out of him or mocking his issues, but I think it's a good one about date safety potentially to share with you. If you would like to hear about some other awful dates I've been on, I'm going to link this in my Dates with Kate playlist so you can go and check the rest of them out. So this is a dating story of, let's call him Colin, to protect his identity. So Colin and I met on Tinder. We matched last August and I asked him for a drink pretty quickly. I liked the look of him in his pictures. He looked like he could have a lot of fun because he was in like fancy dress and wearing like quirky cool hats in a lot of the pictures. So I thought he looked like a laugh. I also hate small talk. I just feel like it's hard to really get a sense of someone over message, so I'd rather just meet up quite quickly. I know that can be sometimes a little bit controversial, but talking to guys on app dates can be really a lot of work. It's a lot of admin, and if you're having the same conversation over and over again, it can get super boring. So that was just my preference, to ask him for a drink quite quickly. I got the feeling from his profile that he was going to be a bit cocky as well. He was obviously quite handsome. I don't know, he just looked very self-assured, very confident, and a bit like a lad as well. So our date was on a Monday night. He chose the date venue, which was the Mayflower. It's a really cute waterside pub in Rotherhithe. I would definitely recommend it. I've been back to that pub since the date and I can confirm it's a beautiful date spot. You can sit outside in the beer garden and watch like the Thames, or you can sit inside and it's really like old shabby chic, loads of like wooden beams, loads of like nautical memorabilia. So definitely recommend that as a date location if you're after a cosy pub. So I was quite impressed that he chose a venue like that, and when I arrived I spotted him sitting in the corner. I made a mental note of the fact that he already had a pint in front of him that he was drinking, a pint of Guinness, and it was already like pretty much empty. So I was like, okay, he's already had a pint, maybe to ease the first date nerves kind of thing. But I was quite impressed. He was super tall, over 6 foot, and he looked like his profile, which was always a good sign. Because it was August and the weather was lovely, the outside beer garden area was full, so we had to sit inside, which was absolutely fine. We had like a nice corner booth to ourselves, and we immediately got talking about work stuff and what we do and where we live and stuff like that. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting. He said he lived in an illegal squat house, which is like base for loads of arty creative types, and I mean, I've heard about places like this, but I couldn't quite get my head around it. So I was like, so do you pay rent? Like, what, could you just get chucked out? Do you have a bed? Like, what is the situation? And he was very like open, and I felt almost as if he felt really proud of the fact that he lived in this illegal squat house. Apparently there were raves there every night, but loads of like really great artists had also lived there and come out of that environment. He also said the word community about 6 times in the space of 15 minutes. I basically felt like he was trying to say things that I wanted to hear rather than actually being himself. I don't know if I'm making sense by that. I'm sure if you guys have been on quite a lot of dates, you might have experienced this as well. But I really just wanted to get to know him. Like, I didn't want him to like throw all these like great words around. So I kept trying to push him for topics of conversation that he could be a bit more, I don't know, just be a bit more himself about. But he clammed up around some of those. Remember, I asked him about drugs and he completely didn't like want to chat about that subject. I've said before in these dating videos that I always ask someone if they do drugs on the first date, because I really don't want to date anyone that does drugs. After experiences with it in the past, that's just like a no-go that I won't compromise on. So yeah, he was a bit standoffish about that, which I understand because that's a quite intense topic to talk about on a first date, but I don't know, don't judge me guys, don't hate me. And along with that, I felt like he was definitely trying to sell himself to me, so he didn't really ask me many questions about myself, which happens on a lot of dates. He also kept bringing up my height and kind of taking the piss about the fact I was so short. I am 4'11", but I was wearing very high boots, so I must have been about 5'2", but still he kept teasing me and just saying, I can't believe how short you are, da da da. I was just like, is that like you trying to flirt, or I don't know, it was just a bit like, alright mate, stop going on about it, I know I'm short, bloody hell. It's also worth noting here that we had a round bought by him at this pub, and then I bought us both a round, so I was on my second glass of rosé and he was on his third pint of Guinness, including the one that he was finishing off when I got there. After those rounds, he suggested that we go to another pub. He said that there was a really cool one in Whitechapel, which wasn't too far if we hopped on the train. So I was like, yeah, that sounds fun, like always up for experiencing new pubs and new date venues. So we hopped on the overground. And then once we were on this train, he was like, oh, actually, why don't we go to this other pub near where my house is? I just didn't get a good vibe about it. Made me feel quite uncomfortable, like he'd almost like lied to get me on the train somewhere with the promise of a pub, but then changed his mind so we'd end up closer to his. And at this point I kind of put my foot down for two reasons. Firstly, because I didn't like that, it made me feel really uncomfortable. I didn't want to end up at a place next to his because I didn't want him to think that I would end up coming back with him that evening. And also I didn't like it because we were already much closer to his home than we were to mine, and if we'd have gone to his pub it would have meant that I would have had to get 4 trains back to mine, which also I didn't really want to do. So I kind of put my foot down and was like, no, no, no. He was trying to be very persuasive about changing the pub venue, and I ended up jumping off the train at Whitechapel, which was where his original second pub suggestion was, and so he followed. We went to a pub, I think it was called the Old George, and there was a comedy like open mic night on, so we watched a couple of the acts together with some drinks, and after a while we went and sat in the beer garden so we could just continue talking, just the two of us. I'm going to make a note here, he'd had 7 pints of Guinness by this point and I had had 3 rosés. I was on my 3rd rosé. He was drinking a lot quicker than me, so he was on his 7th pint, which is quite a lot. I mean, my dad can only handle 3-4 pints max and he is gone. So this guy was like a pro at drinking that Guinness. We spoke a little bit more outside, but around 11 PM I wasn't feeling it anymore. I felt quite bored. I just got the feeling that I should have left a couple of hours ago, like I wasn't having fun and I wasn't getting the best vibe basically, so I decided that I should go. It was around this time as well that he told me he used to have a problem with drinking. He used to be, I think he didn't say alcoholic, but I kind of got that impression. I obviously felt really uncomfortable again at that point because he was drinking a lot with me, and if I'd have known that he had problems with alcohol, I mean, maybe we should have gone to a coffee shop or something like that. I felt really uncomfortable that he was in a situation with me that he maybe shouldn't have been in. Also around this time I started texting my mum and my sister, and when he went to the bar for another drink for himself, she was like, are you done already? And I was like, I'm so bored, I'm falling asleep, we're at the George Inn, how do I leave? Because I knew that I didn't want to be in this situation anymore. I said he's on his 8th Guinness, I'm not even exaggerating, he's just gone to get another. My mum said slip out the toilet window, and I was like, oh my god, laughing, what the duck do I do? The toilet window exit is exactly where we're sitting, imagine. And I sent her a picture of the ladies' loo window, which if I'd escaped would have ended up exactly outside where our seats were. I ended up going to the loo and ordering Uber, and when I came back out he was standing at the bar. He asked me if I wanted another drink. I said no, I want to go home, I've just ordered myself a taxi. So he said he'd walk with me outside, and at this point he looked at me with a big old smirk on his face, kind of leaning against this wall, and he said to me, this is the really awkward part of the evening then. Felt like him saying that with a big old smirk on his face was just initiating that it was like the awkward part of, oh, when do we kiss kind of thing. And I was like, no, it's not awkward. My taxi pulled up, thank fuck. I gave him a quick hug, a kiss on the cheek, and then ran into my cab and made my way home. The whole date just left like a bad taste in my mouth. He was a really lovely guy. Like, he was obviously, I think he was actually quite a sensitive person. He wanted desperately to make a good impression, but I just think he went the wrong way about certain things, like getting a girl on the train with the intention of going one place and then trying to change that place made me feel really, really uncomfortable. Him drinking so much, because again, I don't know this person. He was still a stranger to me. I don't know what kind of person he is when he's drunk or after he's had that much alcohol. I probably should have listened to my gut instinct and left a lot sooner, but I stupidly stuck it out. But yeah, I made it home safe. He texted me once he got home saying, "You can vlog about awkward goodbyes. Did you get home okay?" And I said, "Yes, home all good." And then I texted him the next day telling him I didn't feel anything romantically. He actually sent a really nice response. I said, "We had some great chats, but I really didn't feel anything romantically. I hope that's okay. How about you?" He said, "Of course that's okay. Sometimes the chemistry's just not there. I don't think it felt much like a date, and perhaps we're just very different people. You were good crack, and I'm glad I met you anyhow." And that was that. The date with Colin. I made a video recently about staying safe on app dates. So if you ever feel like you're in an awkward position on a date that you don't feel comfortable in, if you get a bad vibe, you need to listen to that. I'll link that video down below. I also wrote up a blog post to go alongside it. But I think it's really important to stay safe on app dates and make sure there's no chance of anything awful happening. Luckily, I've always been fine, but there have been some situations. If you've watched any of my previous Dates with Kate videos, then you would have seen some of them weren't the best situations. I would love if you could leave me a comment down below letting me know if there have been any situations where you've got a bad vibe from a date and what happened if you left, and also if you have any advice for other people on how to leave a date if you're feeling uncomfortable. Do let me know. I think it'd be great to start a conversation about that in the comments. If you'd like to see more Dates with Kate videos, let me know, and I will see you next week. Mwah!